Hello friends, I hope you all are doing well and staying safe at your own place. I, CA Pujan Kapadia, welcome you all on my today's lecture on the subject accountancy and taxation. As I have discussed in my last lecture, that today we are going to cover the entire GST topic, that is goods and service tax. Basically, we are going to do revision of each and every topic that we have covered till date in this particular unit, and at the end we are going to do one untouched topic in the name of composition levy. So here we go. First was the introductory side, under which I had mentioned. First of all, there are around 160 countries in the world who have implemented GST, that is goods and service tax, or VAT, that is value added tax. France was the first country to implement GST. When did GST came to India? It was being introduced with effect from 1st July 2017. Remember this date, friends. It is 1st July 2017. What is the slogan of GST? It is one nation, one tax. I have mentioned the website so that you can get further clarification on any topic if you want. Now, as on now, there are basically four broader tax rates of GST. So every goods and every services which are covered are mainly classified into these four categories, that is having the tax onto any of these four rates. First is 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. However, certain precious goods like gold is having the GST rate of 3%. Some rough and precious semi-precious stones like diamonds are having the rate of GST of 0.25%. So basically friends, this is your introductory side from which you may have certain short questions or MCQs. Moving ahead, when a person is liable to take compulsory registration under GST. So basically friends, I have explained you in this topic that we are going to see the aggregate turnover of that person, because the liability of compulsory registration is basically linked with the limit of your aggregate turnover. Now, if you are a person who is dealing in exclusive sale of goods, that is you are not dealing in any kind of services, you are selling only goods, but except ice cream, pan masala, or tobacco. If you are operating in a normal state, then the limit of turnover is up to 40 lakhs. That is, if your turnover is up to 40 lakhs, you are not required to take compulsory registration under GST. But however, if your turnover exceeds 40 lakhs, then it is compulsory that you need to get yourself registered under GST. If you are operating in a special category states, now basically friends, under GST Act, there are 11 states which I have mentioned at the bottom part of your slide here that are classified as special category states. Fine. So if you are doing business within any of these states, then the limit of turnover is decreasing to 20 lakhs. That is, if your turnover is up to 20 lakhs, then you are not required to take registration compulsorily under GST. But however, if your turnover exceeds 20 lakhs, then it becomes compulsory to take registration. Second category is category of service providers. Like if you are a doctor, if you are a chartered accountant, you are known as service providers. Then the limit in normal states is up to 20 lakhs, while in case of special category states, it is 10 lakhs. So how we have to remember this? 40 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 10 lakhs. I hope you are clear with this slide. Okay. Next was, what were the principles adopted at the time of transforming, or I can say at the time of subsuming the erstwhile indirect taxes under GST. What the topic wants to explain is what were the principles which were considered or adopted at the time of transforming all the previous indirect taxes into one tax in the name of GST. Like I have told you, there are various indirect taxes in the name of excise duty, VAT, service tax, etc. Now, at the time of converting all these indirect taxes into one tax in the name of GST, there were certain principles which were adopted. These principles mainly include, first was, it should be indirect tax. So only indirect tax were to be transformed into GST. Second was, it should be a part of transaction chain. That is, that tax is being levied at any stage during the transaction, from manufacturing to final consumption. During this entire chain, the tax is being levied either at retailers end, either at a wholesaler ends, at every stage. Third is, it should result into free flow of tax credit. We had discussed the topic of input tax credit. So basically, I would add only those taxes where there is a free flow of tax credit, whether intrastate or interstate. Last was revenue fairness between union and states. I need to take due care that there is proper allocation of income which is being received from the indirect taxes between the union government, that is central government, and the state government. Next topic is there are certain commodities which are kept outside the purview of GST, which I can say which are not covered as of now under GST. This include alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Second is electricity, and the third is 5 petroleum products, the name of which are as under petroleum crude, motor spirit, high speed diesel, natural gas, and aviation turbine fuel. So if the question comes up for 2 marks, which commodities are kept outside the purview of GST, you need to mention all these products. I hope I'm clear with this slide also. Next is the concept or the short note of dual GST. As I have told you that under GST, there is not a single tax that is being levied. Like for example, if I talk about any transaction which is being incurred within a state, fine, then we are having CGST and SGST. The tax is mainly GST, that is goods and service tax, but it is being further bifurcated into 2 parts. That is, one portion is going to central government and one portion is going to state government. So basically, this is the concept of dual GST. The main base on which this concept is coined is fiscal federalism, which means revenue fairness, which basically talks about proper allocation of revenue received from this tax collection between the central government and the state government. Second is for intrastate supplies. I hope now you are very well clear like what is intrastate and what is interstate. When I am doing any kind of supply within the state, that is suppose from Surat, I am selling certain product to Ahmedabad, then it is within Gujarat. So I would say this is an intrastate supply. And what are the taxes which are applicable? It is CGST, that is Central Goods and Service Tax, and SGST, that is State Goods and Service Tax. However, if I'm doing any transaction within union territory like Diu, Daman, Goa, etc., then we are going to take it as a UTGST, that is Union Territory Goods and Service Tax, like Diu and Daman. Fine, they are union territories. If I'm selling any product from Daman to Daman, then it is going to fall under CGST and UTGST. In short, what I want to say over here is there are 2 taxes which are being levied in the intrastate supplies, which is a concept of dual GST. But if there is interstate supply, which means, for example, I'm selling a product from Surat to Mumbai. So now the transaction is taking place between Gujarat and Maharashtra. So this supply is known as interstate supply. In this particular case, which tax is levied? It is IGST, which means Integrated Goods and Service Tax. This tax is being levied and collected by center on the interstate supplies. Now, why we have done this? In the pre-GST period, that is before GST came into existence, there were certain taxes which were being managed and collected by the central government, like tax on manufacturing goods known as excise duty, tax on services known as service tax. Now these were the taxes which were being taken care of by the central government, while there were certain taxes like VAT, that is value added tax. It was being levied on the intrastate sales, which was being managed by the state government. So basically, there were certain taxes which was falling under the head of central government, and there were certain taxes which were falling under the head of state government. Now, in order to properly apportionate this revenue, because now there is only one tax, GST, as a result of which what they have done is they have bifurcated it into CGST and SGST. So friends, this is the basically concept of dual GST. After which we had taken care of advantages of GST and limitations or challenges of GST. I'm not going in detail as of now because all are the general points that we have already discussed above. So basically, I would just like to say that from the viewpoint of your examination as a long question, this is going to be the important one. Like what are the advantages after the coming of GST? Like we can take input tax credit, avoiding the cascading effects, your prices, tax rates are being lowered, as a result of which your product is become compatible in the global market, etc. So you need to thoroughly study the points of advantages and challenges. Let's move ahead. There is a topic of levy and collection, which is stated under section 9. First point says, CGST on all intrastate supplies should never exceed 20%. As of now, as per our knowledge, what we had studied, the highest rate of GST is 28%, which basically means 14% for CGST and 14% for SGST. So maximum, if I want to increase this tax rate, I can go up to 20%. so that my total tax, that is CGST, can be 20 and simultaneously SGST can be 20. So highest possible rate is 40%. Government cannot increase the rate of GST than 40%. So what they want to say over here is CGST can be maximum up to 20%. CGST on 5 petroleum products that we have studied, which are as of now outside the purview of GST, can be levied as and when it is being notified by the government. So they have full authority to pass the notification and start collecting GST on these products also. Now there is one concept that I had explained you, the name of which is reverse charge mechanism, popularly known as RCM, under which these provisions apply to the recipient. In this, I had explained you, generally the person who is supplier or who is providing the services is the one who is going to pay the GST to the government. So generally what is the scenario? Supplier pays the GST. But under certain situation, there are the cases where instead of supplier, it is the receiver who is liable to pay GST. So basically, if I am selling a product, I am a supplier and the person who is purchasing this becomes the receiver. So when the receiver is liable to pay the GST, it is the case of reverse charge mechanism. So it is reverse, fine, as a result of which it is known as RCM. The one instance of which I have written in 4th point is when a supply takes place from an unregistered supplier to the registered purchaser. Now in our example, I was the supplier. Suppose I am not registered under GST, but the person to whom I am selling my product, that is the receiver, he is registered under GST. Now when this is the case, that when a supply takes place from the unregistered person to the registered person, then in particular case, we need to apply RCM, that is reverse charge mechanism, which means the tax is being paid by the receiver. And the last is when we are talking about the business of e-commerce operator, the person who is doing this business, that is e-commerce operator, need to pay the tax as a supplier. If he is not having any kind of physical presence, then his representative will be liable to pay GST. Even if he is not having any kind of representative, then he need to appoint a specific person who will be liable to pay GST. In short, you cannot escape from paying your tax liability. It is mandatory. You need to comply with the provisions. So this was the topic of levy and collection under section 9. Next topic we had started was input tax credit, under which first of all I had discussed the definition or meaning of what is input tax, under which I have told you it means CGST, SGST, UTGST or IGST charged on supply of goods or services or both made to the registered persons. Now first of all, let us understand the meaning of input. Whenever I am selling any product, to make that particular product, I need to purchase certain raw material, I need to avail certain services, fine, so that I can produce my finished goods. Now all the inputs that I am taking to sell a particular product are known as input. And if any tax is being paid to the registered person to avail those goods or services, then such tax in the name of GST is known as input tax. I hope I'm clear with this. It includes tax paid on reverse charge, tax paid on import, but does not include tax paid on composite levy. What is composite levy? We are going to discuss today's lecture at the end. Fine. So as of now, you just need to remember, whenever I'm talking about input tax credit, what is included in input tax? Every kind of GST which is being paid, including reverse charge tax and taxes on import, but it do not includes composite levy. Now I have given you a table below for an example. Let's quickly look at the same. Suppose I am the person who is running a cafe, fine, cafeteria. Now, if I'm serving coffee, then to prepare that coffee, I need to purchase coffee beans. Now, the cost of the coffee beans was rupees 100. It was liable to be paid 18% GST. So what I have done is I have paid it to supplier. So my total bill amount was rupees 100 plus 18, that is 118. So 100 rupees I had paid to purchase coffee beans and I had paid 18 rupees to the same supplier in the name of GST. Now I had prepared coffee out of those coffee beans and I have sold that coffee at the price of rupees 250 to the customer who has came to my cafe. Now the selling price, the MRP of that coffee is 250 rupees. Now again it is liable to 18% GST. So I have collected from the customer 18% of 250, which is coming to 45 rupees. Now, since I have collected 45 rupees in the name of GST from the customer, what government will tell? that please submit this amount that you collected in the name of GST. So GST payable to the government is 45 rupees. But now what I will say to government that sir, I have already paid 18 rupees to manufacture this particular coffee. As a result of which government has given me the concept of input tax credit, that whatsoever taxes you are being paid in order to manufacture your finished product or to provide your finished services, then the taxes paid on such inputs can be claimed as credit. As a result of which at the end, how much tax I need to pay? I need to pay 45 minus 18, that is 27 rupees. This is my net GST liability. And the deduction of 18 rupees that I have taken over here will be termed as input tax credit. I hope now you are totally clear like what is input tax credit. Now there are certain conditions that if I want to take ITC, that is input tax credit, I would be entitled only if there are the following conditions which are being satisfied. Point number A is registered under GST. First of all, I need to take compulsory registration under GST. If I'm not registered, I cannot claim input tax credit. Second is goods and services are used or intended to be used for the furtherance of business. That is, whatsoever goods or services I am taking as an input, I am going to use that particular goods or service for my business only. The third point are again covering 4 different points. First is he should be in possession of tax invoice or relevant document. In our example, since I had purchased coffee beans, I should be having a proper tax invoice or relevant document about the same. Second, he has received goods or services or both. I should have actually received the coffee beans. If I had just placed an order but I have not received coffee beans yet, I cannot take the credit of those particular coffee beans. Third is supplier has actually paid the tax charge. I had paid 18 rupees on that particular coffee beans to my supplier. Now that supplier should have actually deposited that 18 rupees with the government. If he has not paid that amount with the government, I am not eligible to claim the credit. And lastly, he has furnished the return under section 39. So basically friends, all these are the criteria which are supposed to be fulfilled, which are mentioned in the section 16 subsection 1 if I want to be entitled to take input tax credit. I hope I am clear with this concept of input tax credit. Next topic that we had covered were the definitions, under which I had taken totally many definitions. First of all was goods. As the name of the act says, goods and service tax. It is necessary for us to understand what is the definition of goods and what is the definition of services. Under goods we had studied, it means every kind of movable property. So every property which is movable will be considered as goods, other than money or securities. See, it is being specifically excluded that money and securities are not going to be the part of the definition of goods, but it includes actionable claim, growing crops, grass and things attached to or forming part of land which are agreed to be severed before supply or under a contract of supply. So what they're trying to say over here is actionable claim, that is any claim which is being actionable, that is there is a claim which is going on which is favorably maybe come in my favor or it may go against in my favor. Such claims can also be considered as goods. Now there are certain things like any crops, grass which are attached to land. If they are attached to land, then they cannot be said as a movable. But I am entering into a contract that when I am going to supply that particular part, I am going to sever it. That is, I am going to cut it, separate it from the land, and I am going to transfer it. As a result of which, such things are also included in the definition of goods. Moreover, every kind of intangible assets will also be included. And lastly, I have written a point. There are two kinds of definition that we had already discussed, and I hope you now very well know the terms are inclusive and exhaustive. Inclusive means this definition is not complete. Whenever you want to add any points to this definition, you can surely add the same. But exhaustive means this is complete. You cannot do any modification or you cannot add anything in the existing definition. Now, generally the definition of goods is inclusive as per Article 366(12) of the Constitution of India. But we need to remember, as per GST, that is what we are studying, this definition is exhaustive, which means I cannot add anything in future in this particular definition. Next topic is services. What are services? It is clearly written over here. It means anything other than goods, money and securities. So other than goods, money and securities, all the things are included in services. but it includes, though it is not including money, but it is including every activity which is related to the use of money or conversion of money from one form to another. For example, I want to purchase US dollars and against which I am giving my Indian rupees. Now in this particular transaction, if the exchanger is charging a commission, this commission is basically the consideration for the service and it will be falling under the definition of service. So basically money is not included in the definition of services, but when you are incurring any activities which is related to the use of money, it is going to be the part of your services. I've written over here, any activity which is resulting into value addition is services, and services are generally instantly perishable. As and when you are giving the services, it is done. Fine, you cannot preserve the services. Third was definition of person, under which I just simply told you that each and everything is included in the definition of person. Next was work contract. Under works contract, we had done anything which has been related to building, construction, fabrication, completion, erection, installation, fitting out, improvement, modification, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration, or commissioning. Now, all these things are more or less related to the immovable property. That is, I have written over here, which have been related or done on an immovable property, wherein the transfer of property in goods, whether as goods or in any other form, is involved in the execution of contract. Whenever we are dealing or entering into a contract to transfer a property, that is to transfer the ownership from one person to another with respect to immovable property, for which I am making a contract of any of these things that are mentioned over here, then such contract is supposed to be known as works contract. Next definition was places of business. What is my place of business under GST? So first is where the business is ordinarily be carried upon. So basically my shop from where I am operating, my office from where I am operating will be considered as my place of business. Second is the place where I am maintaining my books of accounts. And third is where the business is being carried on through an agent. So basically, in a general sense, what is your place of business? From where ordinarily you are carrying your business. If not, then the place where you are maintaining your books of accounts. If not, then the place from where your agent on your behalf is carrying on the business for you. So basically, this is the definition of place of business. Next is what is aggregate turnover. We have seen this word at the time of studying the liability for compulsory registration. Remember 40 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 10 lakhs. So now basically what is aggregate turnover? Fine. It means the aggregate value of, that is the total value of all the taxable supplies, exempt supplies, exports and interstate supplies of person having the same fund to be computed on all India basis. Let me quickly clear out all these four things. First is taxable supplies. That is every kind of sales, every kind of supplies on which GST is liable. Second is exempt supplies. That is all kind of supplies on which there is no tax liability, which are exempt for the tax. These commodities are basically under the purview of GST, but as of now they are exempt. That is no tax is liable on that particular supply or sale. Third is exports, whenever you are exporting any goods or service. And last is when you are doing any branch transfer. For example, I am having my branch in Surat, I am having my branch in Mumbai. Now, if I am selling or sending anything from Surat to Mumbai, though I am having the same PAN number, but it is interstate supply. So basically, I need to that transaction value, I need to add it to the aggregate turnover. So basically, aggregate turnover includes total of all these supplies. However, it is excluding two things. First is the value of inward supplies on which tax is being payable by the person on reverse charge basis. I have already discussed what is reverse charge basis, under which you are paying tax as the receiver. Now, I am not supposed to include this thing in my aggregate turnover. Why? Because it is going to be added in the aggregate turnover of this supplier. Because in RCM, that is reverse charge mechanism, I am paying tax as a receiver. So basically, I am not going to add it in my aggregate turnover. And I'm also not going to add the amount of central tax, state tax, UT tax, that is CGST, SGST, UTGST, and ITGST, and the cess. So basically, what is aggregate turnover? Total of all these supplies, excluding supply or the value of RCM, and second, all the kind of taxes. Now, next definition was business, under which we had studied every kind of activity, whether or done, whether or not for a monetary benefit, and the allied activities are going to be the part of your business. Last definition that we have seen was supply. I have told you this is one of the most favorite question from the viewpoint of examination, like what is supply and explain the types of supply. First of all, what are the elements that constitute the supply? First is supply of goods or services or both. First of all, there should be a supply of goods or services or both the things for a consideration that I'm not giving it for free. I'm charging anything for this supply. Third is it is for the furtherance of my business. I'm doing this supply as a part of my business. Fourth is I'm doing it in a taxable territory. That is, I'm doing this particular transaction in the taxable territory, which is basically under the GST purview. Last is it is being done by the taxable person. If all these elements are being fulfilled, then we can say it is a valid supply. Now this supply is broadly classified into two types that we are going to study: composite supply and mixed supply. What is composite supply? I would just like to quickly explain you. When the supply are being naturally bundled, for example, what I'm doing is I'm providing you two kind of things. Fine, you are going to buy a television. Now when you are purchasing a television, you are going to get a warranty along with it, like 1 year free warranty. Now you are not purchasing this warranty separately, it is being naturally bundled, as a result of which these two products or these two things cannot be separated. You are going to pay, suppose the television seller supplier says me that the cost of this television is 40,000 rupees. What I'm going to do is I am going to pay 40,000 rupees for the television, but along with television in the same price I am also getting 1 year free warranty. Now when this is the scenario when two supplies are naturally bundled, with one being the primary supply. In our example, purchase of television, that is supply of television, was the primary supply, and along with it I had got the allied, that is secondary supply, in form of warranty, but the price charged for the same was 1. As a result of which, when the services are naturally bundled, they are supposed to be termed as composite supply. I hope I'm clear with this. And the second one is mixed supply. Mixed supply, you can say, is the opposite of composite supply, in which again there is a bundling, but now it is a artificial bundling. Let's take an example. Now, for example, Raksha Bandhan is coming these days. Now, suppose I want to purchase a packet of Cadbury's for my sister. What I'm going to do over here is, instead of purchasing different Cadbury's, I'm going to purchase the entire pack of Cadbury's. Now, suppose there are 5 different types of Cadbury's costing rupees 100 each. Let's take Dairy Milk Silk, Bonville, Fruit and Net, and etc. Fine. So there are basically 5 different products. If I want to purchase that product separately for rupees 100, it is also available for sale. But since it is Raksha Bandhan, so in order to market their product, what the shopkeeper has done is he has make a pack of all the 5 Cadbury's and he's selling it for a single price of 500 rupees. Now, when the supplies are such, when if we want to separate it out and sell it individually, we can sell it. But what he is doing is he is combining the supply, artificially bundling the supply and charging a single price for this. Such kind of supply is known as mixed supply. I hope I'm clear with this. So composite supply is something which is naturally bundled, while mixed supply is something which is artificially bundled, which is capable of being sold individually, but just for the sake of selling that product or market the combined supply, what they are doing is they are combining all the supplies and charging a single price for this same. Friends, prepare this question in a wonderful manner because it is likely to come in your examination. Finally, let's start with the last topic. The name of this topic is composite levy, which is being defined under section 10. I have told you in my initial lecture of GST that if I want to pay GST as a regular taxpayer, I am going to follow all the rules which are stated in the act. However, government has given me a separate option that if I don't want to involve in each and every provisions of GST, there is a flexible, or you can say liberal manner to deal with GST. So he has given me the option that either I can be a regular taxpayer or I can register myself as a composite taxpayer. So basically you can say this is the alternative which is being provided to specific group of businesses. Now let's understand first of all the applicability. If I am a businessman, if I am doing a business, trading or manufacturing, then the limit is turnover up to 1.5 CR, that is 1 crore 50 lakhs. So if I'm operating in a normal state and if my turnover is up to 1.5 CR, I have an option to opt for composition levy. If my turnover is more than 1.5 crore, I cannot opt for composition levy and I need to compulsory follow the normal regular procedure. So this option is available basically to the small business group, I can say, where if you are operating in a general states, then your limit of turnover is 1.5 crore, and if you are operating in a special category states, your limit is 75 lakhs. This is the limit of your aggregate turnover. So if my aggregate turnover is below this limit or up to this limit, I can opt for composition levy. Means I am having an option. I can continue with the regular tax payment, or I can take the advantage of composition tax payment. But if my turnover is exceeding this limit, I am not having any kind of option to go in this particular scheme. I need to compulsory follow this regular scheme. And in case of service provider, the limit of turnover is up to 50 lakhs. That is, if my aggregate turnover is up to 50 lakhs, I am having this choice. If my turnover is more than 50 lakhs, I cannot go for composition levy. So this is basically the applicability, the first point you need to remember. Second is, now what are the rates? We generally have studied in our first slide of introduction that as of now, there are four broad rates of all the products excluding the special products like 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%. Now, wow, this is known as composition scheme because if you take a quick look over the rates, just check out the rates. The total rate of GST I need to pay is 1%, 5% and 6%. Now compare the rate of 28% and compare the highest rate of 6% over here. So this is basically the benefit the government wants to offer to the small business people and small service provider. As a result of which, you can say this is the option available only to few. Now let's understand the rates, the table which I have stated over here. The name of the table is applicable GST rates under composition scheme. Now basically, they have divided all the types of business into three different categories. First is for the manufacturers and traders of the goods. So basically those who are dealing in goods, either as the manufacturers or as the traders, they need to pay CGST of 0.50%, SGST of 0.50%. So the total liability of GST, that is the total tax they need to pay on the supply is 1%. So for example, if I'm having the supply of totally 10 lakhs rupees, then I am supposed to pay only 1% of 10 lakh as the GST. While in normal case, I may have the liability of 5%, 12%, 18% or 28% depending on the product I am selling. So this is the concession you can say which is being available if your turnover is falling under the applicability. Second rate is restaurants not serving alcohol. Please take a note. They have made a explicit note over here that if you are not serving alcohol, then only this is for such restaurants. CGST 2.5%, SGST 2.5%. So total rate is coming to 5%. And for any other service providers, like any service providers, the rate is 3% plus 3%, total is coming to 6%. So this is a table basically, friends, that you are supposed to remember. There are three rates you can remember is 1%, 5% and 6%. For manufacturer and traders of goods, it is 1%. For restaurants not serving alcohol, it is 5%. And for other service providers, it is 6%. Now, there are certain rules. So we need to study that also. Who cannot opt for composition scheme? Now there are certain limitations. It is not open for everyone. As you know, it is a concessional scheme. So every taxpayer would like to take the benefit of the same. So government has kept certain restrictions. It is available only for few. So let's study. It is not available for whom? First point is person engaged in interstate outward supply. So the first point is if you are doing a business where interstate supply is involved, that is supply from one state to another, then you do not have the option to go for composition scheme. So suppose if I'm doing a business of clothes, fine, I'm a cloth trader. If I'm selling the clothes in this state as well as outside the state, then I am not having this option to opt for composition scheme. It is only for those who are dealing in the intrastate supply. If you are doing interstate supply, that is from one state to another, you cannot go for this particular scheme. Second is it is strictly not available for e-commerce operator. Third is taxpayer supplying exempt supplies. For example, if you are supplying any supplies which are not chargeable to GST as of now, your product is covered under GST, but as of now it is exempt, that is no tax liability is there on that particular product, then you cannot opt for composition scheme. If you are non-resident taxable person, then you cannot take. And last is casual taxable person. Now this is again a new concept for you guys. What is casual taxable person? Now say for example, I am basically staying in USA. Now there is one property of my family which is in India. Now I want to sell this particular immovable property in India. So what am I doing? I'm coming to India for a few days just to complete this particular transaction. Once this transaction is over, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to go back to USA. Now you can see I'm not a normal taxpayer. I'm just coming over here to do one particular transaction. But what government says, each and every transaction, if are covered under GST, I need to pay the tax under it. But government is doing me a favor. What it is telling is, sir, you are not required to take a regular registration, but you can take a casual taxable person registration. Why? Because you are a casual person. You are not going to do regular business of selling immovable property in India. You are just coming over here to do one transaction, and after doing that transaction, you are again going back to USA. As a result of which, such taxpayers are known as casual taxpayers. Now, these taxpayers are also not having the option to go for composition scheme. So friends, this is the third topic under composition levy, like who are not eligible to opt for composition scheme. I hope I'm clear till here. Okay, so let's move to the last part. That is the conditions to be satisfied to avail composition scheme. Now, suppose I have crossed all these barriers and finally, if I feel I'm eligible to opt for these options, there are certain conditions that I need to satisfy. The first condition is no input tax credit. Remember the example of coffee and coffee beans, under which I had taken a deduction of rupees 18, fine, as an input tax credit. So here, if I'm opting for composition scheme, there is no option to claim ITC. So I cannot claim credit of all the input taxes I have paid. Second is no interstate supplies, as we have already seen upside, that if I'm doing any kind of interstate supply, I cannot opt for this option. Third is no exempt supplies. I cannot enter into supplies which are exempt under GST. That is, no taxes liable on this particular supply. Next is pay tax at regular rates for dealings under reverse charge mechanism. What they are telling is, under composition scheme, I am having the concessional rate that we have studied in the previous slide of 1%, 5%, and 6%. But if I am liable to pay any tax under reverse charge mechanism, I hope you are remembering the thing that I have explained, RCM, under which you are liable to pay tax as the receiver. Then in that particular tax, the present tax rates of composition scheme are not applicable to you. For that particular transaction under reverse charge mechanism, you are required to pay that tax at the regular rates. That is 5%, 12%, 18%, or 28% as the case may be. So this is the condition which is written over here. Next is various business segments under the same PAN. Example, textile, pharma, etc. Then collectively register all under this scheme or opt out. So what they are telling is, suppose I am the single person who is running different types of business. Like I am having one business of textile, I am having another business of pharma, but it is under my own name, that is under my same PAN number. Then what they are telling is, either you take composition scheme for all your businesses or opt out for all the businesses. It is not like that for textile I can go for composition and for pharma I will go for regular. No, either go for all or go for none. You are not having any option of taking for one and not taking for another. Next is indicate composition tax person at place of business on your board. So this is again a requirement that I need to place these words on my signboard at the place of my business. And lastly, I need to indicate the same words, that is composition taxpayer person, on every bill of supply. That is, whatsoever invoices I am providing to my customers, I need to compulsory indicate the words composition tax person. I hope I'm clear with all the 4 points that we have studied. First was applicability. Second was the rates under composition levy. Third was who cannot opt for this composition scheme. And last was conditions to be satisfied to avail composition scheme. With this, I feel I had done proper justice with this particular chapter. So I would just like to request you all to do this chapter thoroughly. This is the entire theory chapter and only theory questions are likely to be asked from this chapter. So with this, friends, I, CA Pujan Kapadia, thank you all for your patient listening and definitely hope to see you soon in my next lecture with a new topic. Thank you, friends.